Hey everybody, somebody recently asked me what knives I use to paint with. First off, I have an obscene amount of painting knives. It's kind of ridiculous how many I have. Ones that you're looking at right now are really the only ones that I use, with the exception of plastic ones. So I have a love-hate relationship with these plastic ones. Excuse me while I drop these. So, plastic ones, once you start to use the wood handle metal ones, you can feel the difference in them. You know, the metal wood handle ones have more spring to them. I think you can do more with them. If these are what you can afford, use them. It's always the first thing. Use what you have access to, use what you have. I mostly use the plastic ones nowadays for scooping out my paints. So that's my little thing. The other thing that you need to know is that there are palette knives and there's painting knives. So this is what is actually called a palette knife. It's for scooping out your paint, mixing it up on your palette, and yeah, that's what you got. The others are painting knives, and the difference is, you know, see how flat this is? You go to paint with something like this as opposed to something like this. It keeps your knuckles, this little handle right here, and the bend in it keeps your knuckles out of wet paint. So, like I was saying a minute ago, there's an abundance of painting knives, palette knives on the market. It's all about finding what works best for you. I have seen some artists paint entire pieces with one knife. So for example, I saw Patrick Lee paint an entire painting, even getting into the little tiny areas, with a large knife like this one. So I've also figured out over the years what I like. You know, I kind of go back and forth with my different knives. These are the three that I use the most. This one is a number, I think it's a 96 from RGM, Italy. Blick sells these. They have a whole bunch of them, but this is my go-to regular knife for painting. Now for detail work and getting into tight little corners, I believe this is a number 1. It's the smallest size that they make, and I like using this for getting into little teeny tiny areas, also for little bits of texture. And then they have this one. This is a Pastrello RGM, and it's called their New Age line. And there's all sorts of different ones. There's actually 2 or 3 of these that are very similar. This is a number 45. I think there's also, it's like a 46, and then, like I said, maybe a 45. Don't quote me, I'm not good at remembering the numbers. But this is fun for just kind of dipping into your paint and making lines. So those are the 3 that I use on a regular basis. Let me just show you real quick. So I'm just going to scoop out or squeeze out some paint. I used to pick up knives and brushes every now and then, you know, put a couple of bucks in my pocket and go to the art store and pick up a new knife, pick up a new brush, try different things. And I quickly learned that you don't need all these different tools, you know. It's good every now and then to try something new and try something different, but I also think that it's really good to learn what the tools do that you have and play with those. So first thing, paint knife, pick up your color. So watch how you pick up your color, because it depends on what you're painting. You know, if you're painting a prepped canvas, a piece of wood, or a journal, you know, a lot of us work in our journals, we close our pages, so you want to make sure that you give time to dry, etc., etc. Experiment with how much paint you're picking up and how you put it on the surface. So the thing with a knife is you're supposed to think of it almost like you're buttering a piece of toast or frosting a cake. So you can put the paint on, scrape it on as needed. There's also artists who will take the knife and go in. So see how I just picked it up and it's all smooth and buttery. There's also artists who will pick it up and do this. So I'm scraping it hard, pushing down on my knife. Think about holding it and using it in different ways. You know, you get a different look working back and forth versus scraping versus the frosting. One thing that I always try to do is I always make sure that my knife is clean when I'm done. So you see me be wiping off my excess paint a lot. You know, I don't like to leave the paint on there. But think about the different ways, try different ways of picking up the paint. I like using the knives with thicker paint, so heavy body paint. If I was going to use something like a fluid acrylic or some of the more fluid-like paints on the market, I would mix them with the medium, because you can, you know, I don't tend to work with a lot of the fluid acrylics. They're not my preferred way. I like the thicker heavy body paints. So you can go in and think about the different ways that you're holding the knife, but just really experiment with how much paint you're picking up, how little paint, how you're layering the paint as well. You know, that's the other nice thing about working with the knife, is that you can pick up your colors and start to layer them on top of each other like this. So notice that I'm not mixing the colors, I'm not going back and forth, so it's a very different look than if I were to, say over here, go in and drag it and push it down like this, or even start to go back and forth and while it's wet, mix color. And I'm not saying that one is better than the other, but just notice that it's different. So there's different ways in which you can use your knife to apply the paint to the page. So let me show you the small knife. What I like to do is I'll pick up maybe just a little bit of color. So say I was painting something with a tight corner, I can go in around the edge and get nice and tight and get some detail color in these little tight corners. You know, and I'm not picking up too much paint, but this is just one of my favorite tools, where notice that I'm really only picking up the paint and putting it on the tip of the knife and then trying to get as close to, say, my edge or whatever it is I'm painting. Same thing with this. You know, I don't pick up too much paint, just kind of going in along the edge here. And then I notice the little bits of texture. So you can pick up the color and maybe barely hold it on the page and see how much paint you have in the beginning versus towards the end as you start to scrape it and drag it. I'll also flip my knife over so I get paint on just the tip. It's almost like I'm cleaning the tool off on the page and getting texture. And then the other thing, or the other tool that I like, is the big long one, where I can go in, and these are how I use them. You know, the more you sit and experiment on your own, you might figure out other ways to use these tools. But I like loading up the tip of the knife and then just kind of going in and dragging it. Notice that I rotate it and move it in different directions, and I get these really interesting thin lines on the page. You know, landscape artists can do all sorts of different marks. You can do trees, grass, all sorts of different shapes with these, but I love just kind of barely holding it, twisting it, and it's just really fun for the texture that I can create on my pages. I don't usually tend to pick up the paint and go like this with it, though obviously I could be really generous, scoop it up, load it up, and see what I get, but I tend not to do a lot of that kind of painting with this knife. I like more so just using the tip of it and dragging it and just getting the different textures. So again, my favorite knives, I like this one, the number 45 from RGM, and like I said, it's the New Age Pastrello, I think it is. I'll link in the comments, and then you can always email me. What happens a lot of the times is the more well loved it is, you know, the label starts to get covered over. I believe this is a number 1. I got this at Blick. And then just like a regular size, this is a number 96 regular size knife. So those are my 3 go-to knives. If you use something different, or if you have any questions, let me know. I hope that you find this helpful and informative, and have a great day. Thanks for watching.